that works.
All right, good evening. I'm Jonathan. I'm a solution and enterprise architect. Used to be a software engineer for over decades. At some point, I just made a step up toward the architecture to discover what was behind. Earlier, I was asked a bit why, mainly, I think, that you asked me why did you make a job, why did you leave the code? I think it didn't really change much, but the attitude of it. At the end, you have a situation you need to analyze. In the end, you have a complexity you need to clarify. You have some inputs, you have some influence. The developer is more technical, then it's more like organizational. Then also you need to integrate complex systems all together. You get out of the comfort zone as the custom software. You need to integrate proprietary software and make sense of all of it. And you need to build systems that are simple also and are validated by the technical teams, but then also validated by the executive, which is also a challenge to find the right language, the right mindset, how to vehicle, and how to find a common ground to vehicle that idea at the end and the solution that you want to perceive. Overall, as I started young, but I realized it was a bit, how do we ship the solution at the end? What make it efficient to ship something? Within the abstract, the idea was not every day as a developer, was like from Monday to Thursday. It was okay, we build, we deploy, no issue. But then for some reason, the Friday 5 p.m., okay, for some maybe it's already time to go home and enjoy the weekend. Can say that at 3 p.m. it's fine as well. Why don't we dare to deploy on Friday? It was also something that always daunted me. And I was like, okay, do we trust our own code? That's one thing. But sometimes also more like about process-wise. I need the validation of that person's that is already on the weekend or is on absence or leave, whatever, and then you cannot just deploy. Then comes another observation of my experience that when you start a new from scratch, you can set up quickly new system, new software. You can set up quickly, take the time, just get quickly a Kubernetes setup, a cluster, you set up a few services, and it works somewhat fine. The majority is that one thing we always aim is like to have the freedom to deliver fast, which is nice, compelling, and we want to move forward, especially with the trends of Agile, trends of DevOps mindset. We want to shift. The thing is that the reality I've often seen is that growth become more like fragmentation. Team has evolved, technology has evolved, people left the organizations, lost knowledge, and then things, some application got decommissioned. Then you have some ghost application that either you have the code but you don't know where it is running, or you find the running system but you don't know where is the source code. So in overall, it's like you're running blind at some points. Then how to translate it to more the other side that, hey, we don't understand. We are agile, we have some Scrum Master, it's UA, we do the sprints, we do the DevOps, we have all the pipelines, either the approach, or we even do GitOps maybe. But still, it's the feature are slow to be delivered. While in the very beginning, it was rather fast. Small, nimble system, and then we need to move. The routines behind that, the hidden side of it. So the iceberg. We have, of course, the technical debt that we try to fix, but then we need to pitch it. How do we pitch it with the managements that say, I don't understand why we need to refactor the system? Then we have the non-standard code. We try to really, I want to explore something, and we need to allow organizations to have a room to explore. That's how we make innovations. But what else? Then on the other side, there's also the audits. Okay, remember the mess before? How do I make the inventory? We also used to take someone for a month and go to every server, list the application, go to the GitHub, There's also another GitHub over there, because, yeah, why not? And then it's basically, yet again, a blind situation. The reality of it is that if you give just pure freedom, it will be more like free electron. Free electron that move kind of fast in their own area, but altogether, there will be only mostly friction. And over the experience, I realized that the paradox that could help was actually the standardization. For me, standardization was more like, how can we really enforce the discipline into a team? That would be like, okay, we want to make sure that from day one, we start to build a skeleton. Here is my friend Jero. We remember one of our battle where we started from scratch in an organization, and we needed, okay, new setup, new department, we want to build something new way, DevOps mindset, Agile mindset, and we want it in 1 month. The reality behind that, it was more, we don't have enough information, but then it's fine, information can come later. We can start to think a bit asynchronously as well. Then what you need is that understand what is what you need really to have a prod-ready application. It was a bit the key. What do you need? You want it observable, you want to have log, you want it traceable, you want to be to win the confidence of our deployments whenever it's a time, and also the confidence to, if it's the fan, not use the word, how can you fix that in a few minutes? Our approach was more like to have a disciplines for the structure and also then share to the department. And then at the end, I think for the very first tryout of that department, another team took 1 year to deploy their new service. We arrived, it took us 3 months for the first go to prod. And then what was a really winning thing is that we also enforced documentation, knowledge sharing. And then from that, the next team that was from Manila, if I'm not mistaken, came in 2 months, it was live. So the journey was quite heavy. It was still not kind of enough, it was kind of speed, but speed is not velocity. Velocity is when you can really bring value over time, accelerate your pace, but you still need to have the confidence. If you lose the confidence and at some point you think, you know, I would hit okay, all the pipelines can revert it to the first, but if you have that hunch that you don't have the safety net, there's something to improve. And then there was another reality, the D1, the D0. When you start, bit back that story, before the 6 month journey achievement, it was more like, okay, what do you need to build that? You need, of course, we were external, but then we jump into the situation and we need to know what is the basics, back to the DevOps aspect, observability, you name it. Security, of course, is one of the mandatory elements. How you include this into the pipeline. So what I know is that what we realized is since we're taking care of that attention from the very beginning, when we were like in validation phase in the QA, then they really look into the CV and the vulnerabilities that were flagged. Result 0-1. It took basically within the week, we validated and we went to prod. It was in a regulated sector. So the thing is that I understand what is ongoing, but the cost of it was 4 weeks. 4 weeks because even if you are from within the organization, you know it, but you need to set it up. And the reality of it, 4 weeks seems long. It's actually quite, if you don't take AI to help nowadays, of course, because this was a few years ago, it's really like how you can really, that's kind of a good way, because what will happen, you have a team of 5, for instance. You will have 1 for the front end, 1 for the back end, 1 for the infra. But what about the 2 others? They may twist the tongues, you don't want them to twist the tongue. But so you start building something. But the fact is you start to build something that you cannot deploy, and then the moment you want to deploy something, you break stuff. And so you spend more time to fix what you try to build. Do you still bear with me, by the way? Okay, good. So maybe you should, so I see you understand. A lot of things to set up. the thing is that how you can get around it. And that's how to get around it is what we call the golden path. Golden path is a bit administrative, something administrative, but it needs to be a bit of administrative because you need to understand. And like any process that you want to automate, you need to know where it fetch the code, where the build code will be deployed. Same kind of logic. So here the idea of the golden path is that you have automation to build a repository, get all the configuration you need and do that repository, have all the workflow that you need, or else the approach. Security would be embedded as well. You can also name the documentation, for instance. All of these needs to be can be prepared from the very beginning of the project. So the idea also is not only to accelerate the pace and to get ready as soon as you want to start a project and you have a team allocated and you want to move on, but also to provide a good standards. So it means that you have a junior coming up in the team, then you can say, hey, here's the reference of the project you want to build. Here's a few clicks or a command line even if you want, or maybe an agent that would use the MCP to ask your backstage to generate it for you. And then all the setup is there. What is interesting, the key ingredients here, there are many, but what are the keys that you need templates of the application that contains all the codes for the front end if there is a front end, the back end if there is a back end, the infrastructure definitions, how the documentation will be set up. Pipeline will contain all the security aspect as well, from the static code analysis to the scan of the container itself. And what would I miss? Probably other elements that could be also sometimes specific to the organizations. So the aspect is basically to have a vending machine. Like you feel like, hey, you want a Coke? Sorry, it's not for but you go to a vending machine, you click the button, maybe you put a coin or not if you're in the company. There is your Coke, basically. That's the idea behind that. So it is, but for that you really need to understand what it takes from the beginning to the end to have the delivery of the product that is ready to move on. In a nutshell, I think I reused it tagline for summer, but I could not pick it up. It's like create, you build, you deploy, and then you repeat that. Also, something to consider that is you really need to consider it as an internal project. Like a vending machine, if you don't restock it, if you don't maintain it, if no one uses it, it will be just a bare metal that's somewhere and take the dust. Do you want to take your Coke from a dusty machine? Unless you are very thirsty, I get there to a chance of it. So then you can really ensure to have the embedded security into it. The audit, observability, everything that needs also fitting to the level of regulation that you may face. Data sovereignty is also a key element even more nowadays. So if you're on the cloud or on premise, you can really force your way to the actual target location to host the solution. And then you may have some component guardrails. I understood that from MCP there is also a long way to have the guardrails, but I mean for libraries and stuff, it's more like opinionated and probably more easy to set up, even if some creative mind can always find a way around. But that's not the idea. The idea is like follow the stream to know to deploy what you want to deploy at the end. What is interesting also with that concept is that it touched two kind of persona. From the technical people, like we are most of everyone here in the room, is that I want to start a project. I want to try out a POC. I go to the vending machine. I get my project. It's already running on the sandbox maybe. And then let's start, why not by coding my project. Still with you, I think it was a remark. Software engineer that vibe your way and then doesn't care about the security. It was something like that, right? And then, yeah, true. But then here you have designed the pipeline that will verify the CV and such. For the executive, from the very beginning of the project, I would trust that these already fit in that I know that from the very beginning, I will have my inventory. I don't need to get a guy to list every server, to list all the application, to make those links, because the idea is already there. So for today, we will consider that as a cockpit we will use Backstage for a quick demo. The concept it's a bit exaggerated, but not in one click, but in a few clicks, you can say, I want that code. Thanks to an automated pass, we would have what we call a governed service, meaning that it's observable, it's traceable, we can find it. I'm happy because I can move on with my project. Then question I may advance is that what about my existing project? Because I want to set up these new principles, I want to have the right guidelines. And it's a bit of a trick when you want to modernize. There's always a kind of asynchronous track. What I would call the trailblazer track. They would say, here's a new way, this is the good way, this is the good practice. But we don't leave the legacy behind. There is no Ryan, what is it in English again? Private Ryan behind us, I would say. That's no, we keep it. And the idea is like we first need to make it visible. And from a catalog aspect, you can just loop back that information into your catalog and you can then labelize it. And from that, you can always say that, is it conform with it Open API? Does it provide the contracts? Do you have the necessary documentation you need that would fit into the NIS2 concept? Is it a conform CI/CD? Was it just a hack my way to deploy to that AWS resources, so whatever. And what's interesting is that you take that asynchronicity to allow to rethink about do we need to really work on that solution? Do we really want to refactor that application? Maybe we want to retire it. Maybe we want just to replatform it. So that question doesn't need to be answered right away. But what we need at the moment we take the decision is that we need the information. Basically, it's like when you drive your car, you need the windshield clear. If you don't see anything, maybe you pass the gate. We'll see after that. And then there's the day-100 reality check. So, okay, we move on. Some legacy have been refactored, healed, whatever. But then comes some change. We have our template with best practice that used to be our green line for security. But what is security now may not be validated. Maybe over the 2 hours that passed since I did my last dry run to make sure my demo would pass through, maybe one CV popped up and it will be caught and we've driven my pipeline to fix it. So what will happen later? Since you have the template, and since you know which applications are in your catalog and linked to which template, then you can basically try your catalog to say, I know there is that vulnerability. Where is it used? By what application? And then you can find the appropriate way, especially through automation, to open a PR, to not force the change and break all the production at once, because you hope that you would do, to be a magic trick. But then you can still offer the opportunity to every team to merge, first stabilize if needed, and then merge and then clear for the future deployment and make sure that the environment is secure. And of course, you can make sure for the infrastructure drift, thanks to Terraform, but there are also other tools that can help to capture, because Terraform is good if there is a drift about the resource that you deployed and has been configured, but maybe what is missing is that, what if someone just pickups something, because the sandbox was a bit more permissive, because it's something we would expect. So then you can have like some discovery tools, agents that can help you out, of course. But another alternative to Terraform can also help you to really spot those kind of isolation and anomalies. And of course, I already mentioned updates. You want to upgrade vulnerability or anything else, then you can also trigger the attention point to the targeted application. Then it's time for the live demo. So this is, I just need to go there. This is, I just pointed to my own GitHub to try out. What do we see? The context is not really important, but here, basically, I have a reference to my own backstage. It's part of my own organization. It's part of my own build. It's part of what I run, right? Here's my plan B if my demo doesn't work, so I can show the result. And I mentioned so one click, and we would go like so here. In a nutshell, I have a template I will show later. I will fill some form. So here what we see is that I could redeploy my own backstage on my GCP environment. We could ask why, but we would drift away and take too much time, I guess. But there are use cases where you may want to deploy your own backstage. And here's like a gimmick of a prod-ready application, what we would expect with some shortcuts, of course, for the demo. So let's say you choose it. I've said something that we are at the BDN demo. As some, we don't care about the description, but since I have a catalog, I want to know what is running, and there is nothing worse than to have, hey, I know it's running there, but no one has a clue what it's about. So let's put the descriptions and separate it. Other big topics, FinOps. It's always a hassle to run after people to say, hey, that resource, who owns what resource? Which cost center comes to that? How can you link? With that, remember the automation. Let's say here we are doing some R&D. Then we select that cost center. And who owns that? That's so often a good issue to, okay, we know all that is running somewhere. We know how it's critical for the business, but no one takes the ownership of it, whatever is the reason it is historic. So then we turn for us to create that. Okay. We do that. Voila. So there I will go in the Belgian, doesn't really matter. I have a little check. So, okay, sorry, it's correctly not one, but I hope it's good enough. Then I will create. So what it will do, it will fetch the template. Then it will, a bit of mumbo jumbo, I would put it that way. Then it needs to clean up some aspect of the template. One trick is that it actually ignore the git ignore, for instance, Docker ignore. So you need to play a bit around that limitation. So I just remove the dot and then enforce it, the dot. So little technical details around that. What it did is basically published to GitHub. So now I have a new project that has been just created now. I should have like magicians, you know, show you the hat off. Sorry, I missed that step, but you will need to trust me for that. I need to configure the repository itself, and finally it will register back to my own backstage. So it took a few seconds. It will take about 2 minutes 30, 3 minutes to deploy. So in the meantime, what we can see is that here, as you see, I have my new service that is already in the catalog. So it's on my into GitHub, already there. What do we have here is that I have the link to my source code that has been created. We'll come to that. We also can have a link to the tech code because we want documentation. Good for visibility I mentioned. Here we see some relations. I know it's basics, but since you put the relationships in there, who owns what is running, what kind of platform, you can already build the graphs here and navigate the complexity already of your environments and your solution. Then you have links here for the cloud metrics and the cloud logging. So you made it basically observable. But you can see as well, it's not implemented here, but you could point and use a plugin to have your own CI/CD. So how you can see it's more like to a control plane, central place to really have a place. That would be maybe a better word to see from there. Doesn't need to do it all. It's actually delegating all the executions and all the aspects, CI/CD observability, but you can connect to those tools as well. If you don't need it, import it into the backstage. Always like think small and then make progressive step to have a big solution. Then you can see it later. Kubernetes is there. API, then you see what is the API that the application provides. But then you can also say what API it consumes. Then you can start to, hey, there is an issue, you can start to connect the dots together. And then the dependency is sound. Then, if I just go there, I will go to my new demo. So what we can see is that we have the workflow setup, we have a silly backend, still a backend, the docs that are pre-created, the front end, the Terraform, because it doesn't just deploy by itself. And then you need a few elements, documentations. Catalog info is basically the ID of your application. That's from that it will be able to show all the information I just demonstrated. I think it's not very valuable to go into that whole YAML. Of course, the open API that I just demonstrated before. What's interesting is that then in my actions, we should see that, and on one hand, the platform salt is supposedly running live now, and also it was building. And if we look into that details, don't need to go to that. You can have the quality gate. So how you build for the quality you have. So you want to have the static code analysis into it. Hopefully, yes. Do you want to analyze as well what are the legacy that you can use? We have used 5.8 as a free tool, it's easy to set up for the demo. But you can plug it to other more like use like SonarQube is a big famous one that you could connect to and get the information and so on. Other tools also the markets, but just for example. So then I would go there, share the screen, do the matrix. So it took me maybe more than 3 minutes to get to that point, but it's already live, which is still faster than 4 weeks that we really face for the project. And then voila, we are on the global path. It took a few clicks. Only things here we have like it's connected to the backends, and now it's running on Cloud Run if it matters for the audience. I mean, voila. So it takes to something cloud ready to play, to innovate and try out. But it's not that here. It's like the demo is really an aspect of it. It really makes start to shine when we understand when we take a level up. A bit like leveraging my own experience now. That compared to before, that like we have 5 blocks, 4 weeks for each. Here basically, no, not even less because it's as simple as you have 5 teams. In 3 minutes, you have the basics to get started with your project. It's visible, remember, so solutions evolve. Then we see some disconnection. Here on the left side is like we want to deprecate an application, but we know the dependencies, we know the constructions, we know what it interacts with. So we can even evaluate if that rounded element is actually still necessary. It may be relevant to keep it in our ecosystem, but if we do not, the risk of just have the focus on that application that we want to remove, then we will have a zombie application in our ecosystem, hard to trace back. Either you can make it visible, so we can even move it further. And we have a clean cleanup. Other scenario, incidents. Where is the epicenter of this, the incidents? What is the root cause? Remember, we know who owns what. There is documentation. We know where it may be affected because of the dependency graph. And then we know who to call. And so I can show it. But then you can also then direct to the documentation that is needed. So we have the DRP documentation, so disaster recovery plan. We have also the technical architecture. Both of them can allow you to deep dive into how to revert the situation and how to understand how to fix it and then move on and redevelop. Since you know what is going on, we have also what I've seen sometimes like let's create a service. The team is not aware of the service already running or close enough, soon enough, because you have the visibility, you can through the catalog, look it up. And then you connect the dots, say, okay, it's it, let's create that like message broker that we want to integrate there. and decouple all the architecture as well. Let's come a bit my early career and my now career. It's a bit like how we vehicle those ideas. It's like how can we move the execution up to the board, and how can we move the context down to the execution? It's because the figure is from both sides at the end. One example is that, hey, I have something to refactor. How do I explain that to my director? The director says, I want to have a 15% increase of conversion of my checkout random retail environment. And then either way, it will usually affect the business, what we call business capabilities. That how for the business we want to be capable of, in a nutshell. And then from that, you can say that, hey, I'm an engineer. I would like to refactor that because I'm sure it will basically reduce and help to reduce or to increase the conversion rate. So then it starts to talk a bit the same way. But for that, you need to have the right visibility about what are the objectives and what are the technicalities behind, and how it connects all together. And the right middle is usually what we call the business capabilities. Then architect should be able to help to connect with and to bring also the voice up or the voice down. So basically my role now is also to be not to find a bit the solution in a complex situation, but also to be a translator and a connector between the right persons to find the right situation, the right solution. And I think since it's automated, we can also comply to the DORA matrix. DORA matrix is more like a EU regulations, really focused for financials. But when we look into that, if you are interested in DevOps mindset and software engineering and how to ship your solution, is the usual metrics that you would see. How stable it is, the MTTR, so mean time to recovery. I mean, I remember one of the deployments on a Friday, around 3, whatever, it was still Friday. It wasn't prod, still same environments, and didn't work as planned. But we would trust that we could just revert and change. So basically, the mean time of recovery was like the time to survive went live. We discovered something was wrong thanks to the observability. Then we had the time to revert, even though it was requiring manual inputs from validation to say, okay, we go there. So what is interesting, like to question yourself about your solution, can you really deploy on demands? Or what will it take to deploy? Sometimes about 2 weeks, sometimes about 2 months, sometimes 6 months. How long does it take to initiate the ideation of the idea, from the idea to production, maybe? Especially nowadays with all the vibe coding raising. I mean, those metrics become even more interesting because I believe it will shift a bit the usual number they would see. Then the resilience, I already mentioned that you spot the issue and then you can repair. Often the multi-PRs almost will become like command line-like because you know what is affected and you know how to fix it. Then you result and you help basically the other teams to fix their own situation. Initially, you have the risk modernization. Modernization should be not. It's often seen like a one project that we need to fix it all, but the problem of that approach is that you fix it, but if you leave it as it is, eventually it will become again legacy. Here the idea is like how with the golden path we can help to maintain that constant evaluation. There will always be legacy, but it will be more like smooth and bring visibility to where there's a real issue to maintain. Then of course I'm appealing to have 3 minutes to have something live, but it's not a silver bullet. What if you do is provide the infrastructure, the automation, the baseline that fits the organization, but you won't fix a broken culture, you won't fix bad architecture, you won't fix bad analysis. I mean, we still need engineer, architect, and a vision together to make it happen. What's interesting with that is that we have the concept of a glass box. So all is tied together. And depending on the company, you can either have like a total transparency glass that allow even a junior to learn by seeing it's there. It's also avoiding the passive engineering side. I'm a developer, I don't care, I don't deploy, it works on my machine, it's on the GitHub, it's a problem of the apps. I guess it frees some bugs, kind of story, I don't know, but I've seen that in the past, I would be surprised if you know. And of course, that means it's not magic box either. You know what is under the hood. Even if the opacity is up to the maximum, there's still a team that can connect the dots together and you make the teams collaborate to find a fix. One concept I did not really establish well is like there's a real distinction of responsibility, also a concept well known in engineering. Backstage is not what will manage, will make your templates to use a template and will just bring visibility, like I have as I mentioned. And then you delegate all the executions to either way of the strategy of DevOps that you want to apply or the cybersecurity that you want to end up doing. And since I went as an architect, when I jump in a project, I'm like the no guy, you know. Architect is the idea, the architecture decision we made. Fine, but the idea is also to make room for innovation. If you are too rigid, like what I just demonstrated, the problem is that you block the innovation and basically make another roadblock yourself. So the idea is like to find the right cursor of what you want to allow. I want to make easy SPA to try out like I did. And the maintain path is like the route to take. But if I want to have like just the infrastructure setup because I don't support yet cost build and such, then I can have like fine tunes of that. And at the end, we can also have the explored path. Getting to the end, I see the pizza, that's perfect timing. That's nowadays even more the vibe, but how we can fit into that. But on one hand here, we have the application. So we have the backstage with our projects, or the guardrails that are set up. Then nothing will prevent someone to vibe code from that prior to 90. So sometimes the director say, hey, I vibe coded that over the weekend. I want it to use it live now, not just on my machine. When you start from there, then it's a bit of mess to organize. But if you go that way, you already provide additional J0 the opportunity to build something. Where it is like I did my very first template because I was feeling to vibe code it. My pipeline say, hey, you have 11 signals about. Well, okay, let's fix that. You are vibe coding it. You don't need to know. Let's fix it. No, seriously. Let's go it through. You'll fix that. Or maybe there was a build issue that will fix it for you and then move on from that. And once it's on the sandbox, for instance, you know that you already secured kind of a good part of it. And then we have the agent path that we can ship left because backstage, of course, can provide APIs. So then you can make the interaction with them. And then basically you could ask, hey, I have a complex setup to build. What do I need? And you could technically request multiple projects and orchestrate the whole solution in multiple aspects. So getting to the conclusion is that what we need is really to manage and drive our confidence over the chaos. And so basically what I always did in every mission, every job I did, like first understand in what context you are living into, in what context you are swimming into. If you don't do that, you will overlook some details. And sometimes you need to hit the door. Okay, what's wrong? Okay, I need to call that guy. He will open it for me. There is some involved. We can move forward. In a nutshell, a lot of topics I know should be what helps you to get merged on Friday 5 p.m. Close the laptop, enjoy a beer or a pizza in this case. Because what matters is like not to build something boss, which is my role now, but really like how can you build something runaway that will help you innovate, truly innovate. And so it's deployed, I would say, my presentation. And the runway is open to question. Or after the next slide.